Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for Spirit, the stimulating program initiative for retirees that inspires thought. I'm Judy Steinig, Director of Community Programs for the Orthodox Union, and it's my honor to coordinate and host this program. Spirit was started several years ago as an on-site program, and now we're happy to present it as an online program for empty nesters, retirees, not yet retirees, baby boomers, sandwich generation parents, and seniors, everyone who is looking for educational, intellectual, and spiritual growth. Now, since we all continue to shelter in because of the pandemic, Spirit has become the perfect way for everyone to engage in a virtual setting. Today, Rebbitzin Faigie Horowitz will be rejoining us. She was here a few weeks ago to provide strategies on virtual Bikur Cholim. How do we provide support and comfort to those who are ill or shut in, but of course now from a distance? We are happy to welcome her back to the Spirit Forum. Rebbitzin Horowitz is a certified aging in place specialist and serves as the Director of Communication at Caring Professionals, a New York City-based home care agency. She's a writer, a columnist, and Rebbitzin in Lawrence, New York, and co-founder of Rachel's Place, a shelter for homeless young women, as well as JWOW, Jewish Women of Wisdom for Midlifer. It's my personal honor and pleasure to turn the Spirit Forum over to Rebbitzin Faigie Horowitz.
Good morning, everybody, and hi, and happy almost Hanukkah from Lawrence, New York. Thank you, Judy, for that wonderful introduction, and hello to some of my friends and family that I see in the little tiles in front of me. I do want to share with you before I get started that it really is very exciting for me to give this workshop. Why, you may ask? Because the origins of this workshop go back a year ago. The company I work for was invited to participate in the annual Bikur Cholim conference in New York City, hosted by UJA Federation and presented by the Jewish Board of Family and Children's Services. And I had been to one of the conferences a year before, many years before, and I noticed that although there were representatives of Bikur Cholim committees and synagogues of all stripes, not necessarily Orthodox, I did notice that most of the participants were not youngsters. You had very few people under 40. And as I was talking to the woman in charge of the conference, I said to her, I think we have to come up with a topic that will bring people to the Bikur Cholim committees in the synagogues. We need to address the urban professionals who are too busy and running around to actually visit the sick, as well as young families with small children who want to do a mitzvah with their families and be involved in a synagogue, but it's tricky for them. So I came up with the concept and then executed the reality of virtual Bikur Cholim at that conference last November at UJA Federation. And it went over very well. There was nobody under 40, nobody under 50 or 60 in the room, but we had a lot of participation and we had a lot of great ideas. So I thought it was a great workshop. We had it filmed, fine and good. It didn't really go anywhere, even though I shared how well it went. Fast forward several months ago, a young volunteer for Bikur Cholim of Detroit found the conference agenda of the Bikur Cholim conference of JBFCS at UJA Federation from last year and the year before. And the upshot was that I was a speaker on virtual Bikur Cholim and closing the distance. And the year before speaker also spoke about, she was a therapist, spoke about dealing with COVID. So it's, to me, it's like the refuah before the makkah, the healing before the actual affliction. So I have in my hands a workshop, a group of ideas that I can share with people when we are sheltering in place and we cannot physically do the mitzvah of Bikur Cholim, of visiting the sick. And although it's tricky to be interactive and participatory, I am going to rely on Rebitz and Judy to monitor the chat, and I will want to hear good ideas from all of you, because I'm guessing and I see that some of the participants on this webinar are veterans of Bikur Cholim, whether privately or through organizations, and we can all benefit from hearing some creative ways in which to engage in this important mitzvah. So I want to break it down to the 5 senses and then some additional ideas. Basically, if we can't physically be there, we want to use the senses of the sick person and show our support, entertain, empathize, be there with the sick person, even though we cannot be there, actually. So let's start with the sense of hearing. Obviously, hearing is important because hearing lifts us. Hearing is a means of communication, and even when it's one way. We all know that hearing is the last sense to go. So we never talk about an ill person, even if they're in a coma, even if they're on life support. We never talk about a person in third person near the sickbed. But we can engage them with words, with music, and with more. So one of the easy things to do is to load up and prepare a playlist of favorite songs. Songs of a person's past, songs of a person's youth groups where they participated. If you went to Camp Mosheva or you were part of a certain youth group, that will evoke wonderful memories. One of the great things about using and focusing on the senses is it brings a person back to where they were, and it takes them to a different time and place. And that's so valuable when you're feeling alone and sick and cold and uncomfortable and not in your regular place and not with your usual comforts around you. So music can take you back. And of course, singing, even for the silent, is so cheering. Phone calls are something we all use. Phones are around for a long time. We want to make sure that it is a convenient time to speak to the person. We may want to check in with the caregivers to find out when is a good time to talk. We can also leave voice messages and WhatsApp voice calls because those can be retrieved when it's convenient. One of my favorite ideas for reaching out to somebody through sound comes from my cousin in Lakewood. She had several small children and an uncle who was sick for a long time. So every night when the kids were bathed, between bath and Shema, after they had brushed their teeth, they would call Uncle Shimon and talk to him, and they had like a routine. At 9 o'clock, it was a specific time, and they had a routine. They would say, "Hi, Uncle Shimon," and they would sing a song, and each night another child would talk about their day or have the mic, so to speak, for himself. So this is both educational and for the children, and also when you know you can rely on something happening at a specific time, day after day, night after night, the regularity itself is comforting, is encouraging. Someone is always there for me. We can also, as adults without small children, load a phone with podcasts or send a list of favorite podcasts. Many of us are becoming podcast enthusiasts, and there are many in the Jewish community and many on other topics. We can also do family conference calls, and we can choose audiobooks to send and gift our sick friends relatives and neighbors with, so that they can hear something entertaining. And there's nothing like the old comedies. You don't always have to have your eyes glued to a screen, which brings me to the topic of and the sense of sight. You know, this is 2020, and television and screens have been around for a long time. And at this point, our grandchildren are being told that too much screen time is no good, but we all know that. And being stuck in front of a computer, a TV screen, a VCR, whatever it is, a tablet or a device, is really not personal. So how can we use vision and seeing to connect? One of the things we can do is, with the cooperation of other people, put together a scrapbook, put together a collection in an attractive way of memories of the past, of what's going on in the world now, a seasonal one, something connected with Hanukkah or Pesach. And we can do this, we can enlist family members, we can put the materials together, and we can have someone else help us with the actual gluing and pasting. I will tell you that we learned this when my mother, Alaa Shalom, was sick. Someone came to the house to visit and had just been to visit somebody else who was on their second bout of Parkinson's, and serious Parkinson's. This was a national leader, was Rabbi Moshe Scherer of Agudas Israel, and someone came to the house to visit my mother after they visited him. They were both living in Brooklyn, and obviously this was their Bikur Cholim day. So they told my sister, you know, the Scherers, the first time Rabbi Scherer was sick, put together scrapbooks of the letters and cards he received when he was sick the first time. So then when he was sick the second time and he was having a bad day, they opened up those scrapbooks. And he looked through them and he read how people appreciated him, and he saw the cards people sent him. You don't have to be a Rabbi Scherer with a lifetime of accomplishments to be encouraged by scrapbooks of caring, of cards, and of other things. I learned from this, and I did the same thing for my own grandmother. I had done a card shower for her 90th, and I was good about sending cards, and she lived in Israel. She made Aliyah in her old age, and some of my cousins were very good about sending photos. I gathered together the art materials in my house. I asked that the things be sent from Israel, or maybe I brought them myself. It's been a while. And I got in touch with, I had adult kids already, or almost adult kids. I got in touch with one of my relatives, it was great, and they put them together, and we sent back to Israel scrapbooks of the cards and letters and notes and little tags and photographs that were sent. So that is a reminder of a long time and a series of many episodes of caring. So another thing to do is to put together a photo book of the past. This is also something I have done myself. Reminders of past wonderful times, reminders of a person's childhood, reminders of good times together, put together with whether you use Snapfish or one of the other photo book companies. It's a marvelous thing. If you give it to an older person, you're going to want to make sure to order it with hard cover so it's easy to page through, or even if it's somebody who's struggling with their extremities. You can also make copies and soft cover if you want to save money, and they're wonderful gift items. I made one for my grandmother, and I had printed another two, one for myself and one for my aunt, because we put together pictures of the past of like 80 years before, of Europe, pictures that were taken of the family before they even came to America. So it was really taking my grandmother down memory lane. And the same is true of somebody a lot younger. You take them back to a good time. Let's keep in mind, however, that we can't overload it and remind the person that they are now stuck in a bed, that they are now seriously sick. One has to use a little common sense, tact, and sensitivity. And the same thing goes when we are FaceTiming and using Google Hangouts or talking to someone on Zoom. We want to remember that the person may not want to be seen without makeup. The person is in a nightgown, in a bed, in their pajamas, not at their best. So keep that in mind, or make sure that someone knows that you're going to be calling and you'd like to FaceTime or Zoom, and is that a good idea? Is the person up to it? Also, we want to smile. We want to pay attention to the person's reactions, just like we do in a regular conversation, and know when it's time to stop. We also want to remove visual and oral distractions, such as a telephone. Now, let's think about what a hospital room or a sick room looks like. It has 4 walls. It takes a lot of cards to occupy 4 walls. So what you can do is something I did. I think you can see it. I used Staples to order a poster of a poem I had written and published about my grandmother. You know, even if you're not a writer and even if it's not published, you can blow something up because it is big and it's easy to see and it takes up a lot of space on a wall. Now, another thing I want to talk about is a little dated, but it has value to a person who's in bed a long time, and that is a digital photo frame. You know, we tend to think of these as, you know, they've been around, passe, they've been around for 15 years at least. But the nice thing about a digital photo frame with pictures that keep going is that it doesn't take up much space. It's not a screen, and you can see it, and it keeps changing. It holds a person's interest. You can also text regularly and calendar a time to to text. That's visual, right? It's a reminder. Every night before you go to sleep. Hi, just wishing you a restful night, and I hope you get quality sleep, blah, blah, blah. Even if you don't say a lot, it's just a reminder. And that brings me to the whole challenge and opportunity of regularity. I have learned that sending cards on a regular basis is an incredible source of chizuk, of support, short-term and long-term. Just the regularity of every Wednesday morning getting a card from someone, even if it just says 3 silly lines that are personalized, says to the chola, says to the sick person, I am here with you. I keep thinking about you. I didn't just send 1 card once and that's it. I wasn't just yotze. I am there for you on a regular basis. And that's what I do for over 20 years. Every Matzah Shabbos, I pull out my box of supplies, which I will show you. I have 3 like this with drawers of different kinds of cards and stamps. And I also have a stamp with my address, and I buy cards in volume for the different seasons, the different places. There's a place called No Card Cafe on the internet, which I have found to be a wonderful source because you can choose the collection of topics and you have enough to choose from that will suit your personality and all different kinds of people. And trust me, I go through a lot of cards. So every Matzah Shabbos, I prepare my cards, I stamp them, and get them ready to go out with me Monday morning. So that's a nice thing every week. It's non-intrusive. It doesn't have to be very long, and the regularity is the message short term. But long term, like we said before, these cards apparently are savored and treasured, and people don't throw them out. People go back to the cards for a source of chizuk, a source of reminders that they are beloved, that they are cared for. And I personally saw that after my mother was nifter. I had a whole tote bag, I still have it in my closet right there, of cards people sent her. It was a whole year. And if you go back to them in times when you're down, it provides a tremendous sense of love, empathy, and support. Let's move to another couple of easy ideas that involve seeing. Obviously, we can get people videos, but they can stream them themselves these days, so it's not such a big deal. Magazine subscriptions. Magazine subscriptions are easy to gift. They come regularly, and even if the sick person doesn't have the patience to read all the articles or even some of the articles, everyone riffles through a magazine, both the chola as well as the caregivers and visitors. If there are magazines around, it creates an environment of conviviality, of relaxation, just like a living room does. And that brings me to the next sense, and that is touch. When we think of a living room and relaxation and soft and comfort, we think of an Afghan, a plush couch, the coffee table stacked with our favorite books and magazines, and perhaps a cup of coffee next to us. So we want to do the same for our friends who are ill, but we can't do that. We can't. How can we send a virtual hug or touch them remotely? And I think the most dramatic thing I have heard about is connected with my niece. My niece last winter had surgery done in Moscow by an American doctor, of all places. It was cheaper and quicker for her to do it in the place where this doctor would be teaching other physicians the method of surgery for whatever she had. So she left her family for 3 months, and she had school-age kids. She sent me a photo of what her room looked like. It was tiny. It was one room, but it was full of blankets and pillowcases and extra throws on the chair that said, "Mommy, we're warm thoughts from Muncie. We're here with you, sending smiles across the miles." All kinds of warm thoughts that they must have ordered through one of these sites. One of them is called Personalization Mart, I think, .com. That is a way to surround a person with things that physically touch them, which give them support. One of the things somebody brought up at last year's conference was the Misha Berach bears, the stuffed animals that say Misha Berach, typically found in a synagogue gift shop, or regular stuffed animals, or a blanket from home with the smells of the couch. And that puts people in touch with the feel of home. What about being in touch with feelings? We can give someone a blank journal so that they can record their feelings and allow them to feel their pain and their emotions at this time. Obviously, no pressure, and we don't ask them if they used it or not, but we provide them a way to vent and to share their emotions in an honest, private manner and that is respectful. We can also show a person remotely how to use their phone for voice to text and to create a journal without even writing. Most phones that have the little mic can do voice to text. So they can play with it and they can record what's going on and what their feelings are. So that is not physical touch, but it's being in touch with your feelings. Now let's talk briefly about tastes. Most Jewish people want to fulfill the mitzvah of Bikur Cholim with food. Say it with food is a Jewish thing. And most people get too much food. It's not a good idea to send food without being in touch with the caregivers. And there's a big question of what's safe today. So whether you order from takeout or whether you don't get involved with food directly, but send food for the caregivers, it can be done and is a very nice way to show support. You can also use Meal Train, which organizes the food rota in an easy way. You also want to send treats, both for the chola, for the caregivers, and for the hospital staff and aides. Foods and treats that you know that the family will like. Like, Hanukkah is coming, so you can send to your elderly sick chola a box of those little chocolate gelt coins, so they can give them to their grandchildren or have them at the door. No one's coming in for someone who stops to drop something off. It's a way to show reciprocity. And there is one of the very frustrating things about being sick is the feeling, besides being alone, but also feeling unable to do for somebody else and being the recipient of a lot of good. In other words, someone who is a doer, someone who is a normal human being feels very much like a victim and not able to do so many things. And by allowing them to gift others, whether it's with chocolate coins or the grandchildren, is a very important thing, or the nurses and the aides. So that brings me also to the subject of smell. I remember when my mother was sick at Lenox Hill, Mrs. Lubling, who those people who live in New York remember, she was a major liaison at NYU and one of the pioneers. She was nifter a couple of years ago, but she was a European-born strong woman who did not mince words, and in her heavily accented English would intercede with doctors. But she sent over little perfume samples to give the nurses, little kits of games for my sister's children. She had everyone in mind. So I learned that from her, and I want to give her credit. But I do want to talk a little bit more about the sense of smell. Smell is calming. We all know that lavender is supposed to be very soothing. So we can order online to have delivered directly a diffuser for the hospital room, perfume, a scented candle, which they will use safely, even chocolate. Even if they can't eat or taste much, chocolate smells good. Blankets with smells from home, we mentioned already. But flowers do the job of a visual job. But today, if you insist, your florist or whoever you're using can send flowers with an odor, with a nice smell. And that also gives the sick person a sense of participation in a world that they are not cut off from. So those are our 5 senses. And I'm going to pause for a moment. And I want to address, before we get to the Q&A, some other means of support that are not related to senses, that are of a different nature. Many of us are used to distracting ourselves when we have to do something unpleasant. This afternoon, I'm going to the dentist, and I downloaded an audiobook to listen to, and I made sure to put my earphones in my pocketbook so that I will not disturb the dentist. He's a frum guy, and he always has Jewish music playing, but that's not for me these days. I'm in Avelus, so I am going to listen. So distraction has a certain value. But if somebody's really sick, that distraction is momentary. It doesn't always continue. It's hard to sustain. So the short-term distractions, the puzzle books, the Sudokus, the word searches. On the other hand, if someone is able to concentrate a little bit and their vision is good, certain craft kits are helpful. They also, even if the person is not going to finish and just starts, you can offer to finish up that needlepoint, to finish up that project, and they will feel a sense of completion, and it can hang on their wall, even if they themselves didn't do the whole job. And why is that? People like to do. Being active is a healthy thing. And when we restore to a sick person the opportunity to be active, to create something, they're not baking, but they can embroider a bookmark for a grandchild, that makes them feel valuable and puts them in the position of not only creating, but sometimes gifting. If those kits are end products are actually given to somebody else. Okay, another thing is, of course, spiritual support. Not just making sure that there is a Misha Beirach said in shul, but there are Tehillim groups. And sometimes people want to know about it, and sometimes people don't want to know about it. So Anenu.org is the international Tehillim organization that was founded about 23 years ago. When I moved to my house, I learned that here in Lawrence, that the woman 2 houses down, Shandi Capel, is the one who started it. She's the one who ships out Tehillim Mechulak in those booklets that many people use to cover the whole Sefer Tehillim in between several people in one episode. She also has monthly conferences on Tehillim, so that's a valuable thing. You feel like you're doing something for the Chola, and that spiritual support is very, very important. As Yidden, we of course do mitzvahs and get together 40 people to bake challahs and do all kinds of things in the merit of a refuah shalema for someone who is sick. Another useful thing I learned, and it's just very logical, but I will never forget how a friend of mine called me when my mother was sick. And she said, "What could I do for you?" I was late at night. And I said, I don't know. But right now, I'm really frantic because I lost my cleaning help. And bingo, she was right on it, because this was her favorite mitzvah, apparently. She said, I am not someone who goes out of the house much. She was one of these mothers who was basically in the house and found it an exertion to go out. This is what I do. I arrange cleaning ladies for people. This is my chesed. And she would tell me what you need, when you need, I'll get back to you. And I couldn't believe it. I just couldn't believe it that it was such a wonderful fit. So doing chores for people, whether it's including the caregivers and the family, is so valuable, whether it's dropping off the dry cleaning or picking up the shoes from the shoemaker or doing a carpool or two like we are burdened with in suburbia. And you can do that in a cute way. People don't like to ask. You have to be specific, and you can write up coupons. Good for one Matzah Shabbos run to the pizza store. Good for a 2-hour babysitting shift. Good for reading aloud. Good for a shift at the hospital, whatever. Giving a variety of coupons shows that you're willing to pick up the needs, and you're specific. It's not that global offer that nobody picks up on, which is, call me when you need me. What do you need me to do? And if you're specific in your offer, people respond. I'm pretty much done with what my ideas are, and I'd like to hear from the group what you have found to be useful for you, both as a mevaker chola, someone who visits the sick and wants to offer support to the sick, and B, also as a chola, what things do you remember from your illness and your own experience that were very supportive, thoughtful, and encouraging that I haven't mentioned? So, Reds and Judy?
Yes, thank you so much, Reverend Faigie. Yeah.
1 second. I forgot one thing. You can say it's visual, it's touch. I'm just looking around my desk here as to what I missed, and I forgot to show this. It's also one of those things that probably comes from Personalization Planet or Snapfish. It's a tote bag my daughter made for me a couple of years ago. It says, "Carry us with you, Bobby," and it has pictures of her children. Now, something like this, excuse me, is useful for someone in a wheelchair. It's another one of those items that you carry with you and have a use. They don't clutter up a sick room. On the back of the wheelchair, you can put the personal items, a person's phone, a pack of tissues, an extra shawl, because sometimes when you're being pushed in a hospital hallway, it's colder than in your room where you can adjust the heat and the thermostat. So there are many sundry items that you will find that are useful, that can be personalized, and express your message of support and hope. Okay, I rest my case with my tote bag.
Okay.
Judy, back to you.
Okay, so so one person made a comment that it's getting people involved, of course, is the key, and that is very complicated. And the question would be, what role can the shuls and the schools play? Any thoughts about that?
So that is an interesting one. That is an interesting one, because there are thoughtful people, there are people who need reminders, and there are some people who just are not forthcoming, even when they are reminded. So letting people know in a discreet way, and we have ways to communicate very easily these days, so-and-so would appreciate visits. I have been reminded by a congregant, my mother could use company. Am I sending it out on the shul chat? I am absolutely not doing so. I have to respect her dignity and sensitivity, but I can tell my friends, and on my way, I can tell, on my way over on a Shabbos afternoon, I can say, well, gotta go. I'm running to visit Mrs. So-and-so. So the person who takes responsibility for communicating has to be someone with social skills, to have the sharpness and understanding of who to approach how to approach and what to do. Of course, the Bikur Cholim committee is really very key. And some people now really want check-ins. There's someone from our shul that inevitably reminds me, like every 2 weeks, why can't the people call each other? You know, we're pretty much housebound. This is a tricky time. This is a very tricky time. I'm hearing from people that beyond their immediate close friends, many people are not going out beyond their first circle. You know, the people they need, they're engaging with. That second circle of friendlies is not so simple. It takes effort, and people are kind of in their cocoon and passively participating, like on a Zoom. But that's about friendships and relationships. That's not about the mitzvah of Bikur Cholim. So let's go ahead and take the initiative, but do it carefully with a team or someone who is sensitive. And we can get to the person in the middle through various ways, different spots on the circle, the shul circle around. Hope I answered the question.
Before I go to the next comments and questions, I just want to comment regarding the idea about schools. Many of our schools, particularly our girls' schools, have had for many, many years different chesed programs as part of their curriculum. And I presume, I don't have anyone in high school now, I presume now that they have gone to a virtual setting. And if not, that should be recommended by anybody in the community, because certainly to have, you know, a young person call someone who's older, honestly, they can create a whole relationship. It could be a beautiful situation that starts now and could continue. So it's something that within, we right now, Baruch Hashem in spirit, we are a global institution and we span beyond the entire United States. We're all over the world. So who's ever listening or viewing this, bring it up within your community, or maybe you should be the one to start it. Okay, but certainly our shuls and schools can certainly play a very valuable role. A comment that somebody made absolutely is very important, that since some people could react allergically to a scent, obviously check with that person or their caregiver. That's certainly, it's important before you send anything to always check with the caregiver to make sure that it's appropriate. Okay, a suggestion. Create a humor book with cartoons for family members, for a family member that's homebound that they can look at and enjoy. That would be a lot of fun, sure. Any other thoughts, questions, or thoughts we're taking?
I'm going to jump in and comment on what you said about the teenagers and chesed groups. You know, thinking back to when I was a teenager, on Shabbos afternoon, some of my friends went to the nursing home, and if we had someone in the hospital, we were near Columbia, I lived in Washington Heights, we went, but it wasn't easy for me to initiate that conversation with someone much older. And I think one of the things we can do that's a real gift for young people who are interested in reaching out and doing Bikur Cholim or visiting the elderly by phone is to give them some scenarios. And I think the schools and programs do that. Give them some opening lines and normalize that effort that it takes to make that first initiative. I'm a different person now than I was as a 15-year-old. I can do it now. And I don't think I could have imagined opening up. You don't say, how are you? Because if they're in the nursing home, obviously they're not doing well. But how do you reach across? And you don't want to compliment them because they know it's false. Like, I remember groping for conversation starters. So if we can share that with some, and we do that as a circle, both as grandparents and as members of committees or people who influence young people, give them the tools to do that and normalize the difficulty and the discomfort in that opening sentence or two.
Absolutely. Everybody needs strategies. They need training. You can't just put somebody into this cold. The other thing I want to also comment is that too often it's given as I said, a thing that girls do in girls' schools, not necessarily in boys' schools. And sometimes the problem is for those who commented that you can't get people, let's say in their 30s, 40s, and 50s to do this. Sometimes people think it's a high school thing and that's it. Bikur Cholim is a lifetime responsibility, obligation, and privilege, something that we should all do. Oh, a question, what is the best way to extend condolences during COVID, by text, email, or phone call? Okay, so you'll address that in a second. Let me just get the other was a comment. Based on one of the techniques used in person, they say is for two girls to go together to visit. Why not arrange a conversation with two young people and the chola? So that's a way to make it maybe a little more comfortable. Okay, so there's two questions for you about Shiva calls, and also somebody wants to know the name of that website for the cards again.
Okay, Shiva calls. Now that's a tricky one because everybody is receiving their condolences by phone and it's hard to get through. And having experienced Shiva several months ago during COVID and sat alone in my living room, I think a written note is the best thing, because when you receive a call, you're under stress, another call is coming in very often. For us, it was a very abbreviated Shiva because Yontif came. But I wrote a note to someone this past Matzah Shabbos, and then on the third or fourth try, the next morning, I was able to get through to her. And I found she wanted to talk, even though there were people around, I think, as I heard people in the background, maybe it was her stepchildren, I don't know, but she wanted to talk. So I was glad that I made the effort to call and wasn't just Yotze by sending a card. A card is forever, but a phone call when it's not crazy is also valuable. Anything one gets during Shiva is of value, but to really make an impact long-term, a card is excellent. Now to the other question, I believe it's called Personalization Planet. You Google, they pay for Google ads, it'll be right up there. They have all kinds of ideas. Don't think this is going to last forever, but it's a great source if you think about what the situation of the kid or adult who is sick is experiencing. If they're far from home, if they're in a rehab facility, if they're at home but isolated, think about what their room looks like, what their day looks like, and that will guide you to giving something, gifting and personalizing something of significance and writing a message that matches. I find that if you have something to work with, writing the 2 or 3 lines is not so difficult. And frankly, I became a writer because of the cards that I began to send 20-something years ago. I had written professionally for work, grant proposals, things like that. But I have learned that it's very easy to say something if you have the front cover of the card, or if you want to say something a little more mushy, it's a lot easier to say it with a pen and than to say it over the phone. And things that are written are forever. People save them, whether or not the family makes a scrapbook or an album out of it. Something that is written is a reminder of caring that lasts forever.
Okay, I think that's it for questions. Again, we want to thank Rebitz and Faigie Horowitz so much for not just the 2 presentations. On the back end are various suggestions and conversations we've had and different people that she has sent me. So I thank you so much for all of your help and assistance in spirit. It's just been wonderful. So everybody, of course, will be getting the recording later on today. And if anyone's new to spirit, you should know you don't have to email me for the recording. It's going to come to you with God's help, like either later today or tomorrow. That's something a standard. And then, of course, in a couple of weeks, it will be in our archives. So
I want to say, okay. I want to say one thing besides
Sure.
wish everyone a Freilich and Hanukkah. If you have any questions for me, you can reach me by email. I'll give you my work email at the home care, S as in Faigie, Horowitz, the way you think it is, spelled F Horowitz at caring, PROF.com. F Horowitz at caringprof.com. And if you forgot, you can always reach out to Revitz and Judy, my comrade in arms for a lot of good work in the community and nationally, for my contact information. So have a wonderful Hanukkah and so long. Thanks for participating.
Thank you so much. On Thursday, with God's help, we will be welcoming back to the Spirit Forum Jay Goldberg, who was part of our relocation program this past summer. Jay is going to speak about revealing Jewish American heroes from the Revolutionary War until today. So you'll be getting an email about that with your recording, and you can register for that. And as I said before, of course, everything ultimately gets into our archives, but the ones that we're doing right now, the links work. Any link before November 1st, if you experience the fact that it's expired, you are correct. Those don't work. They're all in the archive, so you'll have to see it. You'll see them there with any of the attachments or any of the other materials. We just want to remind you, of course, that during Kislev and of course during the month of December, many of us are finalizing our contributions for the year. And at this time, we ask you to please consider giving to the OU Spirit program so that it's a program that the OU can continue with all of its other valuable programming. So have a great day, be safe and healthy, and we look forward to seeing everybody back on Thursday. And thank you so much again, Rebitz and Faigie Horowitz. Take care, everybody.